I'm Derek Joyce and I'm here with Paul O'Murda, and this is I'm Not the Expert, but this is a podcast where we'll discuss everything from the most complex ideas that we know nothing about to the simplest ideas that we probably know nothing about either. So put the kettle on, get comfy and join us. This week is a big one, Paul.
Yeah.
This one I've really been looking forward to ever since I started reading up on it.
Yeah. No,
and I've known little bits of it all throughout my life and never really known anything about it.
I thought I knew a bit about it. I did, and then I kind of came late to this. Like, you come up with the idea to do the Celts, and I started researching a little bit after you because I thought, I know this. I don't need to research. My Jesus, when I done my research.
Yeah.
90% of what I thought I knew was thrown in the bin, and now I know way more really cool stuff. So
it's nuts.
I'm excited for this one.
We thought we were ready to do it a few weeks ago, and then we had a production meeting and basically argued for the production about who was right, who was wrong, and what was right and what was wrong. And every second sentence was, well, Google it. Well, Google it. Prove it and Google it. Yeah. And then we found out we were both wrong, and it was a lot of just stuff, layered, level after level after level of history.
And the reason for that wasn't that like we were ignorant or anything like that. It was because there's so...
It was partly due to ignorance.
Well, yeah, but there's quite a kind of a hole in Celtic history because they didn't have a written language. So a lot of it was word of mouth.
Everything was spoken or chiseled into a rock. And then try and interpret it a few thousand years later.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of this is open to interpretation, but we've tried as best as possible to verify our sources, to have multiple sources saying the same thing.
Yeah.
We've done our homework on this, and everything that we say here can be taken with a pinch of salt or can be taken as gospel.
I'd just like to add the caveat in before we begin that lots of my homework in my school life was wrong. So if I'm wrong here, get on Facebook and let us know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, the Keltoi, Keltoi, better known as the Celts, were a loose collection of clans originating in Central Europe around the Alps. Possibly. No one knows for sure where they came from, but no one knows 100% where they came from because there was no written history. But all evidence that historians, and not me, but historians that have studied it for years, it alludes to around that area is where they came from, where first evidence was uncovered about 1200 BC. So it's a long, long time ago.
It is indeed, yeah. And not as we first thought around the Roman times.
I never thought it was around the Roman times. That was around.
That's where I was.
The end of the Celts.
That's where I was kind of like, hang on a minute.
But legend of the Celts appears in ancient Greek writings.
Okay.
Like
ancient Greek or classical Greek?
Classical Greek. What's the difference between ancient Greek and classical Greek? Is it the same difference between a Disney cartoon and a classic Disney cartoon?
I don't know. I thought there was.
Which is
quite I thought there was.
I don't know.
Thousands of years, maybe.
But
I don't know. I could be wrong.
Herodotus, who was known as the father of lies, because not everything he said was the truth, did have references to the Celts in his writing.
And we have tried to verify his stuff with multiple sources, but it usually leads back to him, doesn't it?
But the fact that he was a big fat liar makes it very hard to prove or disprove.
It does, and he does seem to be the first to have written about them. So
he wrote referring to the Keltoi, that's Keltoi, and from here on we'll probably just say Celts.
Yeah. It's just going to get confusing otherwise.
A people who dwelled in the upper reaches of the Danube. Now, the Danube source, if I remember my geography, and I sucked at geography, is in the Black Forest Mountains, and that's in Western Germany. The Alps are in southern Germany. They're in lots of countries, but I think that the where they get to in Germany, it's the southern part.
Southern part, yeah.
Southern part.
Yeah, so it doesn't fit with the Alpine origin.
No, I think it fits very well with it because they would have descended from the Alpine regions into what is now Germany and they settled in the upper reaches
on the plains
Danube.
more so.
Well, not even on the plains, because then you're going into Indians, which there is actually a significant correlation between Indians and Celts, which we'll get to later.
Okay,
even though they never met and never knew each other existed.
And existed in very different times.
It's just the way they're interpreted.
Yes.
Okay, but we will get to that later.
Cool, okay.
The architecture of the walls in the Celtoid compounds, and now I'm talking about
Hohenberg,
is
that how it's pronounced?
Which I think was the Danube, but it could be wrong.
Yeah, no, I think that is. I came across that in my research as well, and I struggled with the pronunciation. So,
H-U-E, and we're going to spend a lot of time
spelling words
because we don't really use them, or they're not our language, or we don't understand them.
Yeah.
So Huenneberg.
Hohenberg.
That's what that's what I'm interpreting as. The architecture in their compound, and it's a proven Celtic compound, has Greek references in wall building.
And the kind of techniques that were used to build the wall were very Greek.
So they either had advice from the Greeks, or they had Greeks helping them, or they'd been taught by the Greeks.
Okay. Now, there was a lot of trade between the Celts
lots of wine
in that area and the Greeks. Yeah, I think the Greeks sold them the wine. Sold, it was a barter kind of thing.
Yeah, but you'd think that because Greece, warm climate, better grape growing, wine producing region.
Of course, yeah.
Even though you get grapes in Germany, now I'm not sure you would have.
I would imagine back then it was more, but what was going the other way with a lot of textiles, artisans, some grains. Yeah, they were agricultural.
I'm sure they did slaves.
Probably, yeah. But the early Celts there, were very much they had set down roots. They were very much a kind of stationary, static society, but they were heavily into agriculture and artisan stuff. So textiles, gold work, all that kind of stuff. They're
fabulous,
beautiful,
gold work, and
incredible artisans.
That they
really were.
Use. Yeah, the fact that the compound wasn't kind of thrown up and thrown together the way you'd have a camp compound for an army kind of leans towards the fact that the Celts weren't a nomadic tribe.
Yeah, no, they were way more settled back then.
Way settled.
Yeah.
And they weren't warlike because the walls in the Hohenberg compound aren't for defence.
No, they were whitewashed, weren't they?
Yeah.
And they would have been seen from miles around. Yeah, so that that's not a battlement, you don't want your enemy to be able to pick you out, Yeah, no, absolutely. It did look like a very settled kind of society, which flies in the face of what the Romans would have described them as a few centuries later, as nomadic, marauding war tribes,
Yeah, well, there's the thing about the Romans, and I was going to say this later on when we got to all of that, but you remember Gladiator?
Yes.
Do you remember the beginning of Gladiator?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
On my order, unleash hell.
And Maximus Optimus Prime, or whatever his fucking name is.
Maximus Decimus
standing
Aurelius.
in a kind of clearing in a forest waiting for the barbarian horde to attack.
Yeah.
Well, the barbarian horde were the Celts.
Yeah.
And the Romans referred to them as barbarians.
Yeah.
And
I wonder is that well, okay.
Well, we'll get to that later because some of the practices you get, that's pretty fucking barbaric.
Yeah, no, I just have I have a question around where the name barbarian comes from.
The Hochdorf Prince was discovered, I think, in 1978.
Okay, the year I was born.
Where was the Hochdorf Prince found? My answer would be Hochdorf.
Yeah, which is, I think...
And which I'm probably wrong on, but seems kind of obvious to me, seeing as it's the Hochdorf Prince.
Yeah, I don't know whether that actually refers to an area or...
Haven't a clue. I don't know. My geography's not great. My geography of Ireland isn't great, but my geography of other countries, less so.
And my understanding of German is non-existent, so
it's Hochdorf. Hochdorf, Prince.
Okay. I didn't know whether Hochdorf was a descriptive.
I don't know. I haven't a clue.
Or whether it's
I didn't read enough into it. But I was looking, the Hochdorf Prince, the burial chamber, it's full of jewels, not jewels as in big rubies.
Before we go there, let's
Israel,
just explain to our listeners what the Hochdorf Prince is. It's a mummified corpse, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, he is. He's a mummified corpse of a Celtic noble of some description.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was a war chief. If he was a war chief, why wasn't he buried with his weapons?
Yeah, he just has
he's
one.
got a ceremonial dagger.
Yeah,
what the description
a beautiful
reads
gold ceremonial dagger. Yeah,
but he's got that big Celtic gold band around his neck, whatever.
A torque.
Yeah, it's torque. And brooches and all this kind of stuff.
And a lot of finery.
Scabbards. There's a lot of finery.
Yeah.
But he's not buried with his weapons.
Yeah.
And I was reading about it, and the thing I had in my head was parallels with Tutankhamun.
Yes.
In Egypt and his burial chamber. And it was really obvious to me that the difference between the two, because they were both really opulent, really well off, and full of gold and full of treasures and all that kind of thing, was the Hochdorf Prince doesn't seem to have thought of himself as a god walking on earth.
Yeah, and that absolutely...
Where the pharaohs did.
Yeah, and that absolutely ties in with the Celtic belief system, which I'm going to get to later. But although the gods did walk on earth, in Celtic mythology, that, the leaders and tribes, chiefs, things like that they weren't kind of deified or treated as gods.
And they weren't led into the delusion that they were deities.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about Tutankhamun, and I was thinking about the difference. And then I was thinking, and I've no answer to this, how you get to the point where you think, you know what, I'm a fucking god walking on earth. And then live like that.
Yeah.
And then have slaves and empires and...
Well, I mean, for me, the answer to that's quite obvious. Now, I could be wrong, but to me, it's about power and maintaining power.
It is.
If your followers believe you to be a god...
There's the thing.
You're going to stay in power.
And we're all the way down into Great Egypt now, as when everybody thinks of Egypt and the pharaohs, we're there just talking about this for a second.
Yeah.
His mum and dad were related.
That's right, yeah.
And the thought process behind it is believed to be to keep the bloodline pure and keep it clear. Now that we do know that
understand genetics,
the fact that they were poisoning and killing their own bloodlines by keeping it pure.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so that was that. But the Hochdorf Prince is much more decent a guy to go out to the pub with than Tutankhamun was.
Tutankhamun, yeah. Well, maybe. And he did like his wine, we know from his burial.
Celts loved the wine.
Yeah.
And I read yesterday that the Romans and the Greeks were shocked and appalled at the fact that the Celts didn't water the wine down before drinking it.
Yeah.
They just let it.
And the reason for that is not to feed into the kind of stereotypical, we love our drink, the Celts,
It is.
It is.
I'm very proud
but
of that
also,
fact.
wine was incredibly expensive. So drinking undiluted wine was a sign of kind of status, that you didn't have to dilute your wine. You had enough wine to drink it neat, and to have a party where everybody's drinking wine. It meant you were loaded. You were absolutely loaded to be able to do that. Yeah,
you know what? You can drink cheap knockoff watered down wine, or you can go and just drink the real thing.
Yeah, exactly. Now you have it.
Yeah. So I'm very proud of the fact that I'm a descendant
of the Celts.
Celtic heritage.
Yeah, of good drinkers.
Their wine. And I don't water down my wine.
Yeah.
And I won't ever do.
The reason that I said that to you, that the Hochdorf Prince liked his wine, he was buried with several ampoules, is that what they're called?
Ampules?
No, ampule is a little squeezy.
Okay, the big jug.
Ampule, yeah. Yeah, it's a massive kind of jug. An urn, as Dell would have described it. That held, I think, 10 litres.
I haven't a clue.
I think it was 10 litres.
10 litres will do me.
Right, and he was buried with literally thousands of those. So he had a lot of wine.
Yeah. Fair play to him.
Yeah.
Latin, and this is interesting, Latin it's
modern day France.
It sounds like it's in modern day France.
Yeah.
It means the Shallows is a site where in 1857 a Swiss archaeologist found hundreds of iron artifacts at the bottom of this shallow lake that had just been chucked in there.
Okay.
And they were all
Well,
Celtic
they hadn't just been chucked in there, and I'm going to get to this when I come to the gods a little bit later. One of their gods, Covina, the goddess of water, who would have been a very significant goddess in Celtic times. Water was seen as the pathway to the afterlife, right? So you go across the river Styx in other cultures, same kind of thing with the Celts.
Yeah.
They believed that the other,
transition to somewhere else.
The afterlife was across the water. Yeah. So Covina was the goddess of that.
The afterlife is across the water. That's where the fucking elves went in Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. That's a very Celtic movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot. And I'm going to get to some popular culture references as well later. Covina, she was associated with the horses and oxen who took spirits across the water to the afterlife, and all those weapons and stuff that would have been found in the shallows in the town, they would have been sacrifices to her. So food, weapons.
So they weren't just chucked in?
No, they were offered up to Covina. And there's also evidence now, it's a bit tenuous, they don't know for sure, they can't say for definite. There's evidence to suggest that there was also possibly sacrificial drownings offered up to her.
Okay.
So people would be drowned.
Okay, there was also remnants of a body found at Le Ten that had a ligature around his neck.
Yeah.
So he'd been hung. He or she
possibly hung, or could have
why
been.
Else would you be?
Well, there could have been a rock at the other end of that rope.
Yeah, that's true.
Could be a sacrificial drowning.
I think the rock would have blasted.
Well, yeah, but the rope may have frayed.
True.
Somewhere between neck and rock.
Yeah, but, so possibly execution.
Execution.
Definitely sacrifice of some description.
Yeah.
Okay. Apparently, Le Ten is the origin of the Celtic swirl.
Oh, right, okay.
I didn't find much evidence on it, and I didn't find any evidence contradicting that this was the place
the earliest
swirl origin came from. So that swirl that you see on the curbstone, the front stone to Newgrange.
Yeah, now I was absolutely amazed in researching for this, I always believed those to be Celtic, those curbstones to be Celtic design done by the Celts.
Yeah.
Turns out they were thousands of years before the Celts.
Yeah.
They were done
by... The Celts just came and graffitied them.
No, those stone curbstones were carved at the time Newgrange was built, 5,000 years ago, before the Celts.
Okay.
Yeah, they're completely separate from the Celts.
So who owns that swirl then?
It seems to have popped up, and I know you've looked into this a little bit, it seems to have popped up all over the world at all different times.
Yeah.
So it's cultural appropriation by the Celts.
Yeah, without knowing.
The Celts have claimed it, I say the Celts have claimed it. It's been attributed modernly to the Celts.
Right, okay.
When in fact, the ones at Newgrange are 5,000 years before the Celts, or 3,000 years before the Celts. They were literally made by Stone Age men in Ireland, long before the Celts came here. And that's what the confusion was there when we initially kind of started talking about this, and I thought that was the Celts. I thought the Celts went back that far, and they don't. So that was an education for me.
Yeah.
And I was astounded and a little bit upset or disappointed might be the word, to find that, Newgrange is not Celtic at all.
I knew it wasn't Celtic.
It's Neolithic, but those swirls and everything else, I just, just associate that so much with the Celts.
Here's the thing about the swirls. The Celtic spiral may belong to the Celts.
Yeah.
But the spiral does not belong to
exactly, yeah.
The Maori people, like the Polynesian people in the Pacific, they view the double spiral, and the one on the left, I think, goes counterclockwise and the other one goes clockwise.
Yeah.
As growth, development, and new beginnings.
Yeah, so kind of a renewal theme.
Yeah.
A
Hohokam, Hohokam, petroglyph. And petroglyph just means rock carving. In the Saguaro National Monument in Arizona, and we mentioned Arizona in a previous podcast.
We did.
And specifically the saguaro cactus.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
The Hohokam petroglyph has a carved spiral piece that's believed to represent water on it.
Yeah, I can see that.
Definitely. The spiral, once viewed as a magical symbol, is on the rocks in the Sahara Desert.
Wow.
So we've covered 3 continents in the last couple of
and
centuries.
probably 3 millennia or more as well.
As I don't even want to think how many thousands of years.
Yeah.
The Phoenician goddess of fertility, motherhood, and war. There's a fucking conflict. Astarte, the Phoenician goddess, Astarte, Astarte, is depicted with spirals.
Okay, now that's interesting because you say, you know, there's a combination of things to be a goddess of. Well, the Celts have very similar kind of contradictory gods as well. So
yeah, it's weird, but that's the Phoenician goddess. The Babylonian goddess Ishtar.
Yeah, I've heard of Ishtar.
Which I think I remember being associated with Easter.
Possibly, yeah.
But the Babylonian goddess Ishtar is also depicted with spirals.
Cool. Okay.
So,
so they're multicultural, multi-geographic locations across multiple millennia. Yeah.
The Vikings, the Canaanites, the Maya, all spiral influence. From the Amazon to Europe, through the Middle East, Polynesia, they all deified spirals.
Yeah, and why is it then that it's become so synonymous with the Celts? Like that's fascinating, you know. The Celts are probably like late to the party in terms of time, you know.
Well, no one was late to the party and no one was early because there was no party. Because there was no way any of them knew any of the other.
Oh yeah, no, that's no, I understand
now,
that.
There are theories, and I don't know enough about them, and I'm not even going to talk about them, about people that sailed the ancient world and brought knowledge with them. But I don't know anything about that. I don't even want to go there.
And it's unlikely that any one person or any one kind of grouping of people would have travelled everywhere.
But you were saying they were into astronomy.
Yeah,
okay,
and astrology. Yeah.
All these peoples were into astronomy, and there are spiral galaxies in our sky. So nature loves symmetry.
Yes.
And nature loves natural spirals. And we know it as the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah.
And the Fibonacci sequence is the number that you're looking at is the sum of the two previous to it. So the Fibonacci sequence goes 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Because you start with 1. So you've got your starting point. You go to the next one. 1 and 0 is 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the two previous digits. Then you go to the next one, 2, and that's because 1 and 1 is 2. Then you go to the next one, which is 3. That's because 2 and 1 are 3.
Right.
Then you go to the next one, which is 5, because 3 and 2 are 5.
And how does this relate to nature? Are we talking branches?
No, it's the natural. You know the Fibonacci sequence, that swirl you'll see.
No,
it's a geometric.
I honestly don't know.
Naturally occurring geometric shape in nature. You see in roses.
Oh, right.
You'll see it in shells. You know, snail shells. You know that spiral on the back, on their back.
Yeah,
that's basically.
And what you're talking is the ratio, is it, or?
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
I'm not a mathematician, so that makes what you've said to me there makes zero sense to me.
Neither am I, but when I did my Benson and Frickley cartoon, I attributed a lot of the Fibonacci sequence in the background because I love the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not grasping it at all. I'm not getting I don't understand it.
And I'm not a mathematician, so you should go and look
understand how
after
numbers relate to a swirl or spiral. I don't understand it at all.
If you Google a diagram on it,
I'll have a look. I will. I'll definitely go away from here today now. And
it is.
You have fascinated me because I do, and I mean, anyone walking around, you do see repetitive forms. Like, I mean, look, I think I've mentioned this before in a podcast. You look at the vascular system of a human or any animal, any mammal, and look at a tree. And it's the same branching off and branching off and branching off. Your vein systems look the same as the branches of a tree. You see that kind of repetitiveness all around in nature.
I think that's nature's symmetry. And I think that's
it's evolution and it's carbon-based life forms, and we're all this is when we mentioned this was in the unsciency look at DNA, do you remember?
Yeah.
And it's that whole kind of, life is surprisingly,
DNA.
Yes.
Unsciency DNA for those who don't know.
But life is, it's pretty uniform on a base level across the whole planet. But anyway, let's get back to the Celts now.
Well, we're still on the Celts, but
yeah.
So I think all these peoples around the world, from Polynesia to South America, across to the Vikings and all that kind of thing, I think they were honouring what they saw in nature.
Yeah, that kind of Fibonacci, that repetitive, that
kind of, let's not call it repetitive, it's geometric.
No, I don't mean repetitive, I mean...
I've been told I was repetitive when I was in school, and it's not a nice compliment.
No, Jesus, no, I don't mean it as a negative at all. What I mean is you're seeing the same patterns in a diverse number of things across the world, across nature, across, absolutely. I mean, you could open a tree and look at the rings.
Yeah, well, they're concentric. They're not.
Are they concentric or
they're not spirally?
No, they don't really. Yeah.
Every ring is a year of growth.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but they don't actually.
They don't have. They're not.
They don't connect. Yeah. I'm trying to think of naturally occurring spirals. I can't really think of any off the top of my head.
A rose, the shape of a rose.
Yes, from the outside.
The snail on the land.
Has it, yeah. You've given me two, and I just completely forgot them.
Spiral galaxies.
Yeah, no, I understand it. Yeah, but
they're everywhere.
I'm pretty sure the ancients couldn't have seen the spiral galaxies.
How do you know?
Well, they hadn't got telescopes, and
there was no light pollution.
Well, that's true as well. Yeah, and there would have been no air pollution. So it would have been clearer skies. Yeah, maybe they could.
So we'll never know.
They could make that. That's interesting.
We'll never know because the lazy bastards didn't write it down.
Never bothered to learn to write.
Records indicate that Alexander the Great was camped with his men after clashes with the Scythians, the Scythians.
Scythians, right?
Scythians. The Scythians now, they were an Asian tribe.
Okay.
And Alexander the Great, he was Macedonian, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So all around that region, they would have kind of, let's see what's over here, lads. And then when there's people over there, get them. So I think it was probably that kind of way.
Right.
And he was camped after fighting with the Scythians. They were probably licking their wounds or they were celebrating or whatever. And he was approached by a group of tall, bare-chested men, apparently.
Naked?
They could have been naked, but they weren't going to war.
Right.
So there's no guarantee that they were just walking around swinging their junk.
Okay.
But they approached them, and these were the Celts. Alexander the Great had never actually met the Celts. Didn't know who they were or what they were.
Right, okay. So these randomers just kind of lob up, "Hey, Alex, what's the crack like?"
Well, just kind of, how's it going? What are you doing here?
Yeah. This is our land.
I'm sure they didn't come in like sword swinging.
No, but they wanted to know, like, what's...
I'm sure it was.
Who are these people on our land?
Doing here?
Yeah.
Now, it's a conflict of information, but apparently the Celts believed in reincarnation. And it's a conflict in our information because we've got things that we're going to talk about that contradict each other.
Yeah. And, this comes from them not having a written language, from everything that we know of the Celts. Either comes from the archaeological record, of what they left behind, or what the Romans in the 4th century wrote about them, and the Irish monks in the 6th century would have wrote about them extensively.
About them, which is
obviously going to have a bias.
It's essentially what Rome wrote about them. If it's from the monks in the 6th century, it's from the dictates of Rome as well. It's Catholicism, it's Christianity. It stems from...
To an extent, yes, you're right. Yeah. But a lot of the traditions did survive through the bards and poets' word to mouth.
Yeah.
So the monks would have known about it. It's not just a literal translation from the Roman the monks done, so they would have had that to work from as well.
But the monks, having studied their religion or whatever they're bringing to the world in Rome or affiliated with Rome.
I don't think there was an affiliation with the Irish monks and Rome as far back as the 6th century.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Okay.
Not sure. It's more Christian than Catholicism, I'm thinking.
Okay.
I don't think we were Roman at that stage.
But the Romans, as we've spoken about when we quoted Gladiator earlier on, they controlled much of Southern Europe, and they, in their experiences, would have thought the Celts to be barbarians.
Yeah.
But the Celts were
anything but barbarian. Yeah. I mean, I looked up there the dictionary definition of barbarian, and it is The literal meaning of it is a tribe or clan not of the great civilizations, so Greek, Rome.
Yeah.
You know,
So anybody
in
who's
that
not
sense,
us.
yes,
Yeah.
they are barbarians. But it then, obviously, as it evolved, it became kind of negative connotations for just like, you know, thug, mindless, barbaric. There are things about the Celts that were certainly barbaric, or could be misunderstood as barbaric, but there was very, very good and spiritual reasons for some of those things. And I think we're going to get to that fairly soon, Dan, are we?
I think we're on our way to it right now.
Right, okay, well so let's talk about that.
The Celts were known to take the heads of their victims, of their enemies in war, and place them in shrines to their gods, plural, their gods.
Yeah, they were multi-theistic. Now, and we know that, or we have evidence of that, because I found this really interesting.
So did I.
On the Somme in 1914, when the Allied troops, and probably Germans as well, were digging out their trenches, they found multiple human bones.
Yeah, it was the Allied troops in this particular instance because it was Ribermont.
Right, okay.
Ribemont.
Ribermont, okay. Yeah. So they were digging their lines, and they found massive evidence of a mass burial. Now, I'm assuming at the time, you know, World War One, you're digging your lines, you're finding these human remains, you're just throwing them to the side.
They just kept on, and they would have said, "Sir, we're after finding all this stuff here."
Yeah, and it was marked.
Colonel, whatever his name was, would have said, "Keep on digging, lads."
Yeah.
So it's when historians came back after the war and were researching what happened in the Somme in World War One, would have found these bones and gone, hang on a minute, lads. And they would have looked further into it.
Yeah, right. And anyway, what was absolutely fascinating about that was when they eventually archaeologically dug it up, they found over 500 bodies and not one skull.
Not one. Yeah.
Not one. Zero skulls, which I just thought was...
Which would have blown their minds.
Yeah.
And would have been fantastic just to go, look at all the fucking... There's a ribcage. There's a pelvis. There's a femur.
Yeah.
And, well, where are all the heads? Like, it's class. It's just the business. And the neck vertebrae on the spines that they found showed signs of cutting.
Yeah.
So they were chopped off at some stage.
And most likely post-mortem. I doubt they actually...
But it might have happened in the fight where you chop somebody's head off.
Of course,
All the bodies did not have all their heads chopped off and
in battle.
Yeah,
in battle. Yeah, no, would have been afterwards. Definitely. Now, and the reason for that, Del, so I've discovered in my research, or one possible reason for that is the Morrigan. Have you heard of it?
Spell it.
Morrigan.
No.
She's probably the most famous of the Celtic goddesses.
Right. Okay.
She is the great queen, the goddess of war, and the goddess of demons, right? She's considered by some to be Morgan Le Fay, and I'm going to talk about Morgan Le Fay in a minute. But they appear in different places and during different times and in different stories. So I would say they're not the same person. They have similar traits, but they're not the same god, right? But anyway, the Morrigan could turn into a raven, right? And she took part in battle with the Celts, right? So she would actually go into battle. This is their belief. And she would fly over the battlefield as a raven, and she would instruct and guide the armies on the ground from the air, But at the end of the battle, the Celts wouldn't recover their own dead until after dark to allow Morrigan to pay homage to them.
Right.
In other words, to allow the ravens to descend on the bodies. And then their slain enemies would be beheaded. The skulls were taken back as trophies and as offerings to other gods, but the bodies were put up on wooden racks and they were left
decompose.
Well, and to be picked apart by the ravens.
Wow.
Yeah. So they were offered up to Morrigan. So the ravens would descend, and that was that was a sacrifice to Morrigan. That was her feast, her battle feast. Was on the victims of, well, not the victims, their slain enemies. And then when all that was done, when the bodies had decomposed and were left with bones, the bones were then gathered up and they were crushed and burnt, and the ashes were offered up on altars and the altars were made from the crisscross bones of their own war dead.
Okay, so
The
they kind of
Celtic war dead.
honoured all of the dead.
Honoured all of the dead, yeah, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, and Celts fought everybody. They fought themselves, they fought everybody else, and they fought them a lot.
Yeah, they were...
a lot.
You know, bearing in mind, they were drinking their wine on the Lumen, so, you know.
Talk is cheap, and was cheap a lot of the time.
I mean, when I drink red wine, I fight everybody too, so I mean, there you go. Anyway, right, so listen, that leads us nicely into... Now, I've done a little bit more around mythology and gods there. That's my passion when it comes to the Celts. And I know, come here, look at, you know, take all this with a pinch of salt, obviously. It's their religious beliefs as opposed to any kind of historical basis.
Yeah,
you know.
I take all religion with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. You know what I mean? But I do find it fascinating. It's something I'm very interested in. That's what I've brought to the table today. So I'm going to start. Now, I mean, as we've mentioned, there's no written record of any of this. No. There's no contemporaneous written record of their gods. It was all word to mouth through bards and poets until you get the Romans in the 4th century who began to write down this stuff, and then in the 6th century then the Irish monks. We've mentioned that already, but that's pertaining mostly to the Celts' belief systems.
Okay.
Right, so here's some of the interesting gods that they have, right? You had Angus MacOg. Now a lot of these, just bear in mind before I get started, a lot of these are the British and Irish gods.
Okay.
Now, they would have had other ones in Europe as well, but similar but with different names perhaps, right? Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so these are very much Celtic Irish names and Celtic Welsh names, right? So Angus MacOg was the god of youth and love and beauty.
Okay.
Right? It's said that his kisses turned into birds and carried messages of love.
All right.
That's pretty cool, right? Yeah. So then we have Arwen.
And Arwen? And Arwen from Lord of the Rings?
No, it's Arwan.
Okay.
Right? It may have been pronounced Aaron as well. Just bear in mind, right? And that is the god of death, war, and terror, and the ruler of Anan, the underworld. Okay. And this is what I was talking to you about earlier when we were saying that Alexander the Great and, you know, those guys, and they seem to think that the Celts believed in reincarnation, that they would come back.
Yeah.
If they died in battle, they would come back and fight again the next time.
Wine. Yeah.
The next night.
Literally come back, be reborn, and drink wine and fight again.
But yet what we have recorded, and I do say this, recorded by the Romans and the Christians, would seem to contradict that. But that may be just because,
those fuckers over there. It could have been
it just didn't fit with the scribes' beliefs. So as I say, take all of this with that caveat.
Yeah, well, everything that's written and recorded by a scribe of any description is going to be influenced by what that person's beliefs are.
Yeah, and it's not contemporary. It's not contemporaneous. So I can't say that word. It's not contemporary to the Celts. Okay. Right. Anyway, Belenus, right, is the god of healing, and he was worshipped from Italy to Britain. So he's... What I've just said, a lot of these are Irish and British and Celtic ones.
Yeah, they're kind of wide-ranging as
this guy,
which kind of leads towards the fact that they were kind of nomads, or at least some of them went and travelled.
Yeah. No, there is no question that they did. Yeah. They had set down roots in Hindenburg. But eventually, and I think probably because the Romans started to come across Europe, they did begin to migrate and to conquer. The Celts did conquer their way across Europe. So it is important that we mention that. And their belief systems do seem to have travelled with them. But like all belief systems, Del, and like all religions, over time and over geography, there's subtle changes and differences. But it's still very much the same kind of idea.
As it's written and rewritten and rewritten.
Yeah.
It just
names change, and I'm going to come to that in a minute. Names change, but the stories stay roughly the same. Okay, so Belenus is he's the god of healing, and he was worshipped from Italy to the British Isles. And he would be analogous of Apollo, the Greek god. He'd be very similar to Apollo. And we've talked about Apollo at length before. Now, Borvo is... Again, a god of healing.
That you drink with it?
No, that's Borvo.
Right, okay.
Borvo.
Spell it.
Borvo. Borvo. yeah. So he's also a god of healing. Now you'll see there's a lot of crossover between the gods.
Yeah.
Right, so there was multiple gods for each kind of thing. Right, so Borvo is a god of healing, but he's a specific type of god of healing. He's the god of healing in hot springs.
Right.
So he would have been, again, Southern Europe and stuff where they would have had things like hot springs and stuff. So,
or anywhere they had kind of volcanic activity.
Yeah, now this guy now, who I'm coming to now, Brez, now, I want you to have a think about this guy, right?
Spell it.
Bres, Brez, okay. Right? And I want you to have a think about that. Keep this, what I'm about to say, in your mind for when I get to Lou. Okay. Right? And we're going to talk about something when we get there, but just keep Brez in mind when we get there, right? Okay, Brez was the god of, or a god of fertility. He is the son of Prince Elithor and the goddess Eriu.
Okay, right? At least spell her name.
Right, no, hold on a second. Elithor, Elithor.
Okay.
Right, but Eriu, have you ever heard of Eriu?
No.
The country you're in right now takes its name
okay.
From Eriu. Eriu was the goddess and Queen of Ireland.
Wow.
Where Era gets its name from.
Okay,
yeah, that's, Eriu, yeah. Right, it's E-R-I-U, fada. Or
okay.
E-R-I-U. Right, and he was married, this is Brez we're talking about, yeah? He was married to the goddess Bridget.
Okay.
Right, and I'm going to get to Bridget next, but now, this is interesting. Brez led the Fomorians. Now, the Fomorians are the arch enemies of the Tuatha De Danann is what we...
Oh, the Tuatha De Danann.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are the pantheon of Celtic gods. That's what they are.
Yeah.
Right? And the Fomorians are their arch enemies.
Right.
So they're like they almost, in a way, you could say they're the Roman gods. And it's that kind of, like when the Romans and the Celts were fighting on Earth, the Fomorians and the Tuatha would have been battling in the afterlife or so it's kind of analogous to that. Right, so it is said that Brez turned from Celt and led the Fomorians. Right, so he was a traitor.
Right, so he jumped ship.
And he led the Fomorians in the second battle of Mar Tuathra. Right?
Spell that.
M-A-R-Tuathra.
Okay.
Right, so it's Mar-Tura. Mar-Tura.
You should have written these phonetically.
No. You've seen my name, Dale. I mean, if I can pronounce that, I can get my head around it. Mar-Tura is how it's pronounced. Yeah, sorry, Tuathra. Mar-Tura. Right? He was defeated at that battle, and he was found unprotected on the battlefield by Lu. Now,
spell Lu.
L-U-G-H.
Okay.
Lu is how we pronounce them here, but I'm sure he would have been pronounced.
I've seen it as L-U fada.
Yeah.
And even, like, no offense to people that aren't Irish, but L-U fada is easier to pronounce and just disregard the fada than the G-H.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In a lot of Irish words, a lot of Celtic, a lot of Gaelic words, G-H is silent.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he was found unprotected on the battlefield by Lu, but he wasn't killed by Lu. He was spared by Lu as he promised to teach the Celts agriculture.
Right, okay.
And that was how the Celts came to become an agricultural.
Okay, I can imagine how that deed went. Please don't kill me and I'll teach you how to grub shit.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I found that very interesting, right? But I want you to keep some of those details in mind, right?
Okay.
Brez isn't the last that we're going to hear of Celts joining the Fomorians.
Okay.
Right, so and Lu plays a major part in that too, but I'm going to come to that in a minute. Anyway, Bridget, the goddess Bridget, not to be confused with the saint Bridget, or maybe she is, right?
I think she is.
Yeah, her name comes from Bri, B-R-I, meaning power. Okay. She's the goddess of fertility and creative inspiration. She's revered as a warrior, a healer, a protector of children, and a killer of snakes. Now, she's the goddess of the fire and sun, and according to some sources, agriculture. But that's up for debate. Okay, so that's Bridget. Now, I know...
She's the goddess of agriculture?
according to some sources.
Okay, even though that fucker said, I'll teach you how to grow shit.
Yeah.
He could have said, nah, it's all right. We've got a goddess who does that.
As I said, there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of crossover. They like their gods. They like to have lots of gods, and they ran out of things to make them gods all
That's
down.
what we did with the Greeks. Lads, listen, there's not that much left to be god of, so you're going to have to share this one.
Yeah. There's a lot of that in the Celts. So, Cernunnos, right? Now, Cernunos. Cernunnos or Cernunnos, the horned god.
Okay.
Right, now I like this guy. He's also the god of fertility.
Right, okay.
Like a lot of them.
The horny god.
Yeah,
right, okay.
Well, there you go, the horned god. He's a god of fertility, nature, grains, and fruit. Right, he's associated with horned animals, so rams, stags, stuff like that. He was symbolized by a serpent with a ram's head. Right, that was his, that's how he's depicted in Celtic art. It was said that he was born on the winter solstice and dies at the summer solstice.
Okay.
So he's the winter god.
So when is this?
Okay, the winter solstice is the shortest day of the year.
And the summer solstice
is the longest day of the year.
Yeah,
just so you know. Yeah, and that's very important in ancient Irish times as well, even before the Celts.
Yeah.
But that's another podcast for another day. And in the Christian religion, he is what they equate to Satan. Satan. Okay. Yeah. There you go. So everything's borrowed. Nothing's new. Right, now we get on to Ceredwyn. Ceredwyn. Now, it could be Ceredwyn, but I think it's Ceredwyn.
It's not C.
Because I know, in the Welsh.
Yeah,
in the Welsh in particular, it's always a hard C.
Yeah.
Right, so she was the goddess of the moon and negative prophetic power. So she's literally the prophet of doom.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And she guards the cauldron of Anan, the underworld, in which inspiration and divine knowledge are kept. So they have this cauldron in hell that has all inspiration and all divine knowledge.
In hell?
It's in hell. It's in Anan, the underworld, Because they took all that from the world, maybe.
Okay.
So in other words, so you have to have divine inspiration. I don't know. Now, I've already covered Kavina, the goddess of water. We talked about her earlier, so I'm going to skip over her for now. Now, the Dagda. Have you heard of the Dagda?
Yeah.
Do you like Dagda, do you?
Thanks.
Yeah. The Dagda is probably the most famous of the Celtic gods. He's the god of gods. He's the good god, the god of the heavens, the father of the gods and men. He's the god of life and death. Now, he also had a cauldron. They were fond of their cauldrons.
Yeah, they were, weren't they?
Right? And he had a cauldron called Undry, right? Undry, which is basically a horn of plenty. It was a cauldron that would never be empty. So if you ate from Dagda's cauldron, you would never go hungry.
Sounds like you're saying a fucking poem, man.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well,
there's a cauldron will never be empty.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's, Then you have Dylan, the god of the sea, and the only reason I've included him here, I don't have much about him, was it's literally Dylan, Dylan. And my godson, my nephew, is Dylan. So he's the god of the sea. And he was symbolised by a silverfish.
Fucking take it up with Poseidon, Dylan.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, right. Now, this next one's quite interesting, Dan, right? Epona. And she was a goddess of, guess what?
What?
Fertility.
Wow.
Yeah, they were into their fertility, these Celts. She was associated with the horses and oxen that accompanied souls to the afterlife. And she's unique in the Celtic pantheon in that she's the only Celtic god to be adopted by the Romans. So they also have they also have Epona, and it's Epona, sorry. And they built a temple to her in Rome.
And is she the same name?
Yeah, okay. She was literally adopted, like as opposed to commandeered or co-opted.
Verbatim.
She was literally
verbatim. There you go.
Yeah, there you are. Now, on to this next one. Isis is the Gallic god of nature.
Spell that.
Isis, E-S-U-S.
Oh,
nice and easy.
Isis.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be I-S.
Right, so he's the Gallic god of nature, and it was said that if a young tree was cut down, right, a tree that was too young to be cut down, then Isis would demand a human sacrifice. And the sacrifice had to be the person who cut it down or a member of their family.
You know what? I think we should bring back some of those fucking beliefs.
I know, yeah. I'm not far off.
You cut that shit down. Read to you.
Right, now I have one here, Dan. Right, now stop me if you've heard this story.
Go on.
Okay, I think this is going to sound very familiar to a lot of our listeners. And we're back to Lugh. And I did say, remember the Fomorians and remember Brez. Well, Brez wasn't the only guy who defected to the Fomorians. Lugh's father, Cian, also defected to the Fomorians, right?
C-I-A-N?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, C-I-A-N, yeah. Now, Lugh was the god of sun and war, the protector of the weak. He was a god of metallurgy and craft. It is said that he crafted a sword made entirely of pure light.
Okay.
Now, bearing in mind what we said about Lugh earlier, right? It's L-U-G-H.
Yeah.
And outside of Ireland, people struggle with the silent G-H, and that may be pronounced a bit more like Luke.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, so this is Luke with a sword made completely of light. Right? His father, Cian, defected to the Fomorians under the spell of a powerful Fomorian wizard who basically turned them to their side. He led the Fomorians into battle against the Tuatha Dé Danann, and eventually Lugh and his father faced each other in single combat during this battle. Lugh defeated his father but didn't kill him, and it broke the spell, and his father rejoined the Tuatha Dé Danann. You heard that story before now?
Yeah, it's familiar, vaguely.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite clear George Lucas was heavily inspired by Lugh's story in his writings for Star Wars. And, I mean, it is no secret, and George will tell you, that he's influenced heavily from a lot of ancient cultures and stuff.
A lot of the best storytellers are.
Yeah,
so
no, absolutely. But I think
George.
I think it's fair to say that is...
The only problem we have with you is that you sold it to fucking Disney.
Yeah, but I think it's fair to say that I'm now going to refer to him as Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, do.
You know, definitely.
How do you spell his name? L.U. Father.
Yeah, that's it. Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
So, anyway, right. So, I digress. I think.
I digest.
I digest.
Which I got Paul to say in a previous podcast.
That's going to be a running gag throughout this podcast. Okay, Morgan Le Fay, who I mentioned earlier. Now, many people say that Morgan Le Fay and the Morrigan are one and the same.
Yes.
It's not that simple. There's more of a holy trinity of goddesses, and it's Bridget, Morrigan, and Morgan Le Fay that are a trinity, more so. But anyway, that's I'm not going to go there just now. Morgan Le Fay, more meaning sea. So she's the goddess of the sea.
Yeah.
So where Dylan is the god of the sea, Morgan Le Fay is the goddess of the sea. But she could curse men. She could cast curses on men.
Right.
Always remember with the Celts as well, you have good gods and kind of bad gods. So it's not, and then you have the Fomorian who are the enemy as well. But you have gods who could heal, you had gods who could curse, Nuada. Now this is another one that George Lucas might have been looking at as well, I think, right? Nuada or Lud. He has two names. He's the god of healing. Right?
Nuada.
Nuada, N-U-A-D-A. Nuada, also known as Lud, right? He's the god of healing, right? He lost his hand in battle, right? Which meant he couldn't become king.
Yeah.
But he had two brothers, right? Now I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this one because I was trying all night and I couldn't get it.
If you haven't been butchering stuff all day.
Dian Kiecht, right? It's D-I-A-N C-E-F-A-D-C-H-T.
Okay.
So I'm thinking Dian Kiecht, right, was the god of healing. These are Nuada's brothers, right? So Dian Kiecht, the god of healing, and Goivnu, G-O-I-B-I-N-U, Father, right? Okay. Goivnu, god of smiths, right? So healing and smiths. So they got together.
That's so fucking vague.
No, but listen, they got together and they forged their brother a silver prosthetic hand.
Okay.
In order for him to become king.
Okay.
And later they used magic to actually give him a flesh and blood hand.
Okay.
Again, I was saying George Lucas may have been looking at this stuff, hands being lobbed off and replaced by metal hands as a recurring theme through Star Wars. So there you go. Right. And then our last one, Rhiannon, in the Welsh British Celts.
Rhiannon. Spell it.
R-H-I-A-N-N-O-N.
Rhiannon. I fucking flew. Mike wrote a song about her. Go on.
She would have been, I suppose, what Bridget is in the Irish. Rhiannon would be in the Welsh and English. She's the goddess of birds and horses. She's embodied riding on a white horse. She's the great queen of the goddesses.
Right, okay.
Much in the way as Bridget would be
Yeah.
in the Irish Celtic one. So that's what I have on the gods.
Maybe the Fleetwood Mac did write that song about, because
oh yeah, no,
she does it right. Stevie Nicks introduced her and she says this is a song about a witch.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
No, definitely, yeah.
Okay. Join us for part 2 for Rome's rampage across Celtic Europe. Brilliant. It's going to be a banger. And thanks a million to the people in Corduff Community Centre who give us the room and give us the space to be able to record these podcasts.
Yeah.
You guys have been fantastic.
And they always put us in, a really good frame of mind before we come up.
There's always a smile and there's always
great positivity.
Yeah,
Love
it's
it.
lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks guys.
Yeah.
You're the best. See you later.